Hello everybody, my name is Jeremy, this is Red Beans Recording. This is a weird video, but I thought I'd do it because I'm desperate for content. Everyone loves content. This video is about how I go about learning a Eurorack module. That sounds weird, right? You're like, why would I want to watch that? Well, I mean, it's a cool module, first of all. From what little bit I've figured it out. It's the Chord Pilot from Knobula, which is a chord generator that plugs directly into their polyphonic oscillator. Polyphony in Eurorack is kind of a pain in the ass. So this is an interesting take on it. And there's some things about it I automatically understand, and there's some things I don't. So I want to talk a little bit about like the module, obviously. We'll make something with it. I also want to talk about like when you get something new, that sort of like thing you can do where you can explore it based on the understanding that you have of the general sort of like environment that the device exists in. Like you can look for things like gates and 1 volt per octave inputs and stuff like that and explore it. And then eventually you're going to need a manual, right? So that's what this is. I always have my trusty iPad here with me with the manual loaded up. I have a Google Drive folder full of manuals and it's great. I just sit here and I learn the module, and that's what we're going to do today. So if that sounds cool to you, great. If it doesn't, I mean, great. It's very dark in here, so you get spooky, Jeremy. Actually, I could probably change that. Hold on a second. Feeling that's really gross, isn't it? Not this. Ooh, that's certainly bright. Looking at the module, I can see that it has, first of all, it has a MIDI out, and it came with a little MIDI cable, so I put that into the polycinematic. I know that that will trigger it. I haven't looked at the manual yet. We're going to do that together. I know that I need output from it, so we can start with that. We can plug it into our mixer, okay? I always like to start like really simple with my first patch with a module, so I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm literally just going to trigger it and go through the controls one by one. So now I know that I can press a button and we can hear it. So that's a good thing to be able to do, right? Hearing your own module. The next thing I need to do is I look at this and I see that it has a gate in on the Chord Pilot. So I know that that means if I send it a gate, it will probably trigger the polycinematic. So I have a really simple way to create gates down here with the Metron. I can just tap in what I want, and that will send a gate to this. And I want this to be really, really simple at first because I don't really need the complication of rhythm in this case. I just need a simple gate. Nice and slow, nice and chill. I have done a non-talking video of the polycinematic. It's a wonderful... Oof. Yeah. The polycinematic is a wonderful polyphonic oscillator, as you can hear. And it's got a couple different modes in it, some different sounds, got a filter, and an envelope. Already, it's pretty cool, right? Just by going around this thing. So the first thing you want to do is kind of just explore, touch things. We got all these knobs and stuff. I can tell that these buttons are giving me some kind of chord variation, right? I'm not exactly sure what yet. Next, I can see I have a circle button, so I don't automatically know what that means. My guess would be that it would go around this, but I'm going to turn it and find out. Well, that's certainly not going around the circle. It sounds like it's some kind of transposition thing. Based on the name, circle and transposition, I bet you that is the circle of fifths. But I don't know for sure yet. So we'll come back to that. I see we have some switches here. One of this says A, B, and C bank select. Now, I would assume that that would switch between 3 different banks of chords. If I went through this and listened to these chords, and went to C. Okay, so there's no change. So that's weird to me, honestly. Like, that's not what I would expect. I'm going to have to look into the manual to figure that out. Same thing with the circle button. Over here, I have a switch that says modal, circle, and preset, and it says buttons. So right now, the buttons are doing a modal change. If I change this to circle, they do what the circle knob did. So I'm almost 100% sure that's the circle of fifths. And then I can switch between presets, but we don't have any presets. So doing that just made it stop. So again, I'm going to have to figure out what's going on with that. I don't see a change in the bank, and I don't see a change in the preset. I also have this like bank thing here, and I can switch between, and I don't see any change there too. So I'm going to have to figure out what the hell that's about in the manual. I have something that says note count. Okay, so that seems to be the number of notes in the chord. That's cool. That's really, really cool. The first thing I would do after discovering that is look and see if there is a CV input for that. And there's not. This is one of my complaints with these modules, the Polycinematic and the Chord Pilot and just Knobula stuff. They're actually very MIDI focused, and you'll notice that they just don't have CV input for things that you might want. If they did, they'd probably be twice the size, but I think it's a really missed opportunity in Chord Pilot to not have CV inputs for that stuff. Okay, so I don't know exactly what that does. Obviously, it creates a variation of the chord. It's not an atonal change, which means it's working within the context of the chord that's currently created. So that's something I can keep in mind. Next up, bass note. I can hear that adding a low-end note. So this is on, off. So that's cool. Makes our chord have a bit more underpinning, like an octave down for the root note. Next up, I have something that says conform. And conform up until this point was slightly to the right. It has a noon marking. On the right, it has 3 white circles that get increasingly bigger. And on the left, it gets increasingly bigger with dark circles. So let's take it to the right and hear what happens. Right now, it sounds like an octave. That sounds like fifths. Let's pick one of these settings with modal that has fifths in it. Okay, great. So now let's turn this to the right. That seems like some kind of suspended chord with something extra to it. This is where we were when we were started. That's a major chord. So maybe to the right. Yeah, that's just a major triad. Maybe to the right, we go into major. Okay, that's like a 7th. Love me some 7th chords. Ooh. I'm not really sure what that is. That's pretty spicy. Very spicy. So I can say for myself that when I get to the right all the way, I get to some chord sounds that I don't really like all that much. Though there are some variations I do. And I'm touching the modal knob right now to get that variation, right? To the left, that's like a spicy diminished thing. Ooh. So that sounds minor to me. So maybe on the right we go major, and maybe on the left we go minor. And then in the middle, we're like perfect fifths, so we don't have any real like mode to the sound. So we'll revisit those, okay? We have interval up here. Okay. This seems to be the spreading of the chord over more keys. So very tight over here. And then spread. And spread. Okay, cool. That's good to know. Next up is bias. Bias is towards low or high. Not really sure how that interacts with interval. But I will notice that bias is one of the controls we have CV control over. So if I was to take an LFO and plug it into bias, I'm assuming we would hear some cool movement. I think this is especially cool if you go to a square waveform, because then it just jumps between two. So already we have figured out a way that we can manipulate this thing to get different chords out of it, which is nifty. Finally, we have strum. Let's figure out what that does. Ooh. Let's go ahead and slow this down. Too much stuff happening at once. Cool. So I can hear it strumming through a triad. So what if I increase the note number? Cool. Well, that's cool. Nice. Yeah. This is a little omnichord generator thing. I really like that. One more thing in here that we can test out. There's a gate switch here. Right now it says chord. It says orbit. Okay, so that didn't change anything. And then it says arpeggiator. We'll figure out what orbit does, but it looks like when you change it to arpeggiator, we actually get an arpeggiator. I know that seems weird, but let's go ahead and add some more. Notes to that. That's beautiful. I like arpeggiators that don't just take a clock sometimes because you can basically tell it the pattern you want to play based on the gates that you send it. Polycinematic does have a reverb, and it's very pretty, as you can hear. So I think that could be the basis for a patch, right? Like, let's just take a quick diversion before we jump into the manual, okay? There we go. Some drums from Trinity going into Dismodus Versio. I like bleeping and blooping, you know? It's fucking fun. All right, let's get into the manual, shall we? Okay, so I have some specific questions I am looking to answer in the manual. But number one, what's the point of these buttons and how do I like make them do what I want? Like, can I program chords into this thing? Two is what's the circle thing do? What's the circle knob do? What's the modal knob do? What's orbit do? We're going to go through it from the beginning because I don't want to miss a thing like Aerosmith. And then at the end, we'll turn it into another patch. Okay. So they say Chord Pilot is a MIDI controller for discovering, generating, and arranging chords. It's aimed at all types of music creators. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Principle behind Chord Pilot is that of an imaginary pair of hands, like ghost hands. I'm sure you've seen Art of Ghost Hands, right? Oh, and here we get like our interval, note count, bias. Okay. So I was right about bias and interval. Modal, I'm still not sure what it does. We'll figure it out. All right. Now we get some boring stuff. Power, MIDI, playing chords. Press the audition button to preview a chord set by the controls. Okay. with the buttons set to preset. Previously saved chords can be triggered from the 8 illuminated preset buttons that surround the audition button. There we go. We now know that these all represent a preset that can be saved. I got it now. Okay, so if we went to preset mode over here, we don't have any preset saved, and that's why. So we gotta make some chords, buddies. Make sure I don't miss anything. I have terrible ADHD, so I can just sort of like skip over whole things thinking that I've read them. Use the circle encoder. You can transpose the chords 3 ways. Circle of fifths. Okay, so I was right about that. Circle of fifths. Octave shifts. Wonderful. Master transpose. Cool. Interval. Sets the distance between each finger and the chord. We already kind of figured that out. Bias changes how evenly distributed the note intervals are across the board. Note count sets the number of notes in the chord. 3 to 4 is a good number to start with. Higher numbers up to 8 notes. So we're on 8 right now. Bass note steals a note from the chord and places it in the octave below. Turn the knob to select which note is chosen to play in the bass octave. With the knob fully turned to the left, it has no effect and all the notes are as they were. Okay, got it. So it took a note from that chord. You can hear it. So that note was up. And now it's down there. Modal. Here's one that we didn't know. Shifts the whole chord shape up or down the grid. This is not the same as transposing the pitch of the chord because the pitch relationships between the keys on our grid are not necessarily equal intervals. Furthermore, instead of notes playing many octaves apart, they can also wrap around the octaves as we shift, keeping notes bunched together. Modal is also available to access live on the buttons using the button switch. So that's what we were doing earlier with this. We were in modal mode. So that makes sense why these are all nicely related. That explains exactly what we're doing. Conform takes the chord shape you've created and conforms it to a known scale of notes. Turn the control to the right for more pleasant sounding major scales and left for darker, more minor sounding notes. Okay, so we did that earlier. That's so cool. I could actually patch a track just doing that right there and changing the note on Renee. Maybe we'll do that for our thing, but I still want to figure out how the hell to do custom chords. Oh, this is kind of interesting. So it's not just major minor. The first thing here is a sus2, sus4. So that's beautiful right there. I fucking love that. Then we have our major triad and our minor triad. So right just in the middle there, we have so much to work with. Then we have augments, a major seventh on the right, natural minor, natural major, and then on the left, we ended up in chromatic, which is why that sounds so terrible. And then on the right, natural major 3, which also does not sound very good. So as long as you can memorize that, or at least know that that is like part of it, and it's not like too super mysterious, then you can dial in some good stuff. Oh, here's something we didn't know. When you're in arpeggio mode, the strum knob changes the arpeggio type. So right now you can hear it going up and down. That's just up. That's just down. So that's good. We can have different arpeggiator types. We have up and down, up only, down only, random, shuffle, and shuffle 8. So that's great. It also says that when we're in orbit mode, which we still don't know what orbit mode does yet, but when we're in orbit mode, it will choose a sequence length. And I don't know what that means yet, but that's why we're still working through this, right? Toggle switch, gate switch, here. Chord, that's what we're in right now. Pressing or an audition or preset button plays the chord as long as the button is pressed. Great. Orbit mode. Orbit plays each chord button in a sequence, starting with the first button you press and continuously orbiting. Oh. Oh my gosh. I'm in love. Okay, that's so cool. Orbit button, place each chord in a sequence, starting with the first button you press and continuously orbiting. It's the kind of thing that just makes me want to put a fucking kick drum under it, right? Gotta figure out what to do next. Editing presets of a saved chord preset. First, enter edit mode by holding down the preset button of the chord you wish to edit and pressing the circle button encoder. Okay, so you can't have anything in gate. That's something to know. Okay, wow, so when you're in this mode, it shows you all the notes in the chord. That's fucking dope. Editing the individual notes. It actually says whilst in edit mode, the preset buttons will each represent a single note in the chord. To change the note's pitch value, hold down the relevant button and turn the circle encoder to change it. Okay, here we go. We're gonna make some chords. I'm ready. Let's do it. This is probably the most tedious thing I've ever done in my life. I think this thing is much more fun when you just like mess around with it. I'm not going to lie. So we know that we can do that. Obviously, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time here like editing chords. I'm going to like play like I said I was going to earlier. The important thing here is that we learned we can do it. And once you know that something can be done on a module or in a piece of software or something like that, when you need it, you'll use it. You don't have to use all the features of a piece of gear. You can only stick to what is fun and useful to you. But knowing what's in there is really, really important, and knowing the limitations and the features. So that's how I approach learning a new module. It's, first of all, see what I can do just by looking at it and have fun with it. Maybe get lost in a patch or start making something right away with it, until I run into a wall. Take notes of the things I don't understand. Get ready to look at the manual, because those are where your questions are going to get answered, hopefully. Go through the manual piece by piece. Really read it thoroughly. Don't miss anything, because seriously, like a single sentence can change your experience of how a module or a synthesizer or anything like that works for you. I know RTFM or read the fucking manual is like, kind of cliche at this point, but there's truth to it. Like, you can miss something that will change your entire experience of the piece of gear. So definitely do that. And then, once you've gotten that stuff, it's important to practice it, do it, actually use it in a patch, or use it in a song, or just do it. Make a patch with it. If it's a synthesizer, make a preset. Really capture that aha moment. It'll get stuck in your brain easier, so you can do it later if you need to. I'm going to outro a patch. I'm going to get it set up, and then I'll go. This video has been going on quite long enough. Thank you all for watching. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Beans Recording, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Oh, no. Oh, God damn it. You stupid piece of shit. Stay there. good enough.